All right, as you probably know, that is the sound of our next daily briefing. It's Friday, June the 5th, and we're going to visit with Mayor Koplin and talk a little bit about the Whittier outbreak and Cordova's, the reaction from some Cordova policymakers to that, and a few other things. Not too serious today, but just, covering the subject as we conclude the 13th week of Cordova's emergency response. Now, of course, these programs are heard in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours on the Clam and the Eagle. They get archived soon after the first playing at youtube.com/Cordova TV, which makes them shareable or able to be listened to at your convenience. So we hope you will take advantage of that, and we'll start our conversation with Mayor Koplin. Mayor Koplin, we are concluding another, what do we say, exciting, curious, interesting week of operations here. And a big story statewide has been this outbreak in what they call the Valdez-Cordova census area, which of course makes everybody's antenna go up. Whoa, But actually, I learned we encompass quite a number of communities, and it turns out that this outbreak among some seafood workers has been in Whittier. So what do you know about that in the ongoing communications you have with other leaders in the state?
So basically, I got a lot of early concern as test results were being published about Valdez, Cordova. As I mentioned before, I think Valdez, Mayor and I correspond quite a lot. We each thought it was the other's community, but lo and behold, it was neither. And ultimately, we found out that it was Whittier. They did have one positive test case. I'm assuming that they did a lot of follow-up testing of that processing workers, co-workers, and found 10 more active cases. So a cluster of 11 active cases. And of course, in a community that's unique, just like all the others, as we've said, everyone has their own challenges, but they live in the Baggage Towers as a community for the most part. A very clustered, concentrated living environment that's really a high-risk type environment. So a lot of concern there. Okay.
And so, were you party to any conversations in Cordova with initial concern over the fact that, this is going on in Whittier, what if it happens here? Was there a lot of that sort of thing? Or was it more, it looks like the systems are working and we can feel pretty good about where we're at?
Well, actually, I was contacted directly by Whittier. And, Cordova, of course, had an active case. We managed that. And communities do talk to each other. And there's a lot of concern, and to have all those active cases and their living conditions. And they had kind of recognized the great dialogue that we had with the state and the federal delegation and the resources. And so they reached out with some suggestions, and we were able to kind of help connect them to the state's medical team and get them participating in their special meeting, their council, and so forth. Mm-hmm. So we were able to help a little bit facilitate some conversations.
Well, and that's actually kind of been happening a lot, hasn't it? Where state officials and other communities, when they have challenges, I keep hearing that they're looking to us, they're getting in touch with Cordova to find out what it is we're doing. Are we sort of serving as a model for a lot of other places in the state?
Actually, we've been hearing that from top to bottom. Reach out, Mayor O'Neill over in Valdez, when he reached out initially a few times, it became more of a conversation later, but initially it was just, wow, it seems like you guys are out in front of us, putting good pieces in place. You're having good, respectful communications between your organizations. You're working together. How are you doing that? And kind of the same with Whittier, that, like I say, they saw, wow, you've got, the state medical director calling your city council meetings. You're getting support and resources. As I've mentioned in the past, our Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski have been calling and texting directly to check in. But the other part of those conversations from our senators, from Dr. Eastman, the Chief Medical Director for Homeland Security, Dr. Zink, is that in all their travels all over the state, and in Dr. Eastman's case, all over the country, they said Cordova is a model. They said if we could get half the communities to manage this half as well as your community, we would be in a whole different place. So I think sometimes Cordova is kind of hard on itself and hard on each other because we do set our expectations so high. And as I've been out and about, the compliance is just, it really continues to exceed my expectations. And I've heard some people say, oh, nobody's wearing their masks in the harbor, or this or that. And then I hear someone else turn right around and say everybody's wearing their masks in the harbor. So sometimes I think we kind of see what we want to see. It probably lands somewhere in the middle. But overall, the takeaways from the medical professionals who are on the ground, walking around, looking on our own incident management team and medical staff, they're happy with the levels of compliance, and it is serving as a model. And we are getting tapped by other communities for suggestions and feedback, and frankly, from the state itself.
Yeah, well, and speaking of the state, I was scrolling around on social media, which, frankly, I wish I didn't have to do. If I didn't have the job I did, I might have abandoned it a while back, but such is the nature of my employment. But I saw a picture of the governor with a fish and bragging up Cordova. Now, how did that all come about?
So yesterday, we sent thank yous. When I say we, the city of Cordova and the Native Village of REACT, we'd actually been working on this for a couple of weeks. Again, we've had a lot of resources come to bear. There are a lot of people working long hours right up through our leadership and showing their care and concern and support for our community health and safety, but also for our business communities and their economies and livelihoods. And we just thought it was a really appropriate time to send a thank you for leadership and acknowledging the extra effort and extra pressure it puts on the leader through a time like this. And it's been well received. I just had a chance to look at some of the comments, and a lot of really positive feedback there. And frankly, a lot of positive comments about Copper River salmon and the great seafood that we source here. So, yeah,
well, that's it's certainly good to see that it continues to be a premier product, obviously, and you and I actually, you think about the governor, you being mayor, and that kind of thing. We did that really good program on Tuesday, and then it evaporated into cyberspace while I was trying to get it from point A to point B. But we talked a little bit about what it's like to be a leader through this thing. You've got elected officials that have to make decisions that impact a lot of people. You've got business owners that are now being thrust into that role to a much greater extent than normal. There's some real ups and downs in terms of that I thought your perspective was very interesting on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra pressure on leaders. And as I mentioned, Senator Murkowski and Sullivan reaching out, I'm getting texts and calls at like 11 o'clock, midnight, their time, and again at 7 or 8 in the morning, their time. It's a really tough thing to try to balance the lives and health and safety of citizens you represent, and also try to make decisions that will help support their workplaces and their employees and their livelihoods when they kind of compete in a pandemic like this. And, it's kind of easy to get your arms around that, but it works all the way down to local shop owners. They also have to worry about the health and safety of themselves, their own employees, their customers, business partners, and it's just a lot of extra pressure. So that's why I think there's been a very appropriate focus on mental health and the great resources we have here in Cordova to help with that, and some of the tools that we can use to keep our mental health up. But it was a great program, but really in a nutshell, it's just that there's leadership at a whole bunch of levels. It does put pressure on them, and while we do look to them and expect things from them, they also need our support and encouragement. And that's part of what we were doing.
Yeah, and the city has been very, very upfront about that, all throughout the phased reopening of the businesses, saying, you know, just because the state says it's okay to do certain things and just because the city eventually falls in line with those things doesn't mean any business has to do those things. A business, a restaurant may be allowed to let people come in and sit down, but they may not feel that's a good idea. They might not think it's safe. They might be concerned about being the source of an outbreak or something, so they decide to continue to do takeout. And really, we should respect those decisions for any businesses who opt to do that, as well as those who make the decision to stay in line with if they decide to be as open as the state allows them to be, and not to think that they're throwing caution to the wind or that they're being haphazard about their decision making.
Well, and I can tell you as a manager of a small organization, when you make life safety decisions, you often put weeks, if not months, of planning into it. It is your biggest concern as a manager that you protect the health and safety of your employees and the people you serve. And in the energy industry with high voltages and so forth, it's very clear safety risk. Just like in medical. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect that the minute the state has a mandate that you don't take the time to look at it, like in Whittier's case, where, yes, they all live in apartment buildings, but they have access to anchored hospitals, right? Where Cordova might not. So it's appropriate that the city takes a few days to look at the plans and make sure that they're implementing provisions that work for Cordova. And in the same way, that rolls all the way down to businesses. I've just spent a good chunk of my last day looking through these mandates and saying, you know what, it is time for Cordova Electric as an organization to have families coming in and visit with their families, employees that want to travel, to kind of update from this 14-day quarantine period to be more in line with the state's mandate. But it takes me a little bit of time and check on the legal side of it and make sure that we're keeping good provisions in place. And I would just share that if you have a state operating plan in place that you have to file as a critical industry, or if you've filed your mutual assistance plans with the city, you can just update those. You don't necessarily, I know at the state level anyway, you don't have to get their permission. Just file an addendum or an amendment to your plan, and as long as you don't make it less restrictive than the state's mandates, it's still your business, and you need to do what's appropriate for you to protect your customers and employees.
Sure. Yeah, well, and I like seeing that continued idea being put out in the city's communications. And of course, the leadership goes, it's not just mayors and governors, it's city council, it's all the members of the incident management team, trying to do this a great analogy that I don't remember where I saw it. It was in a news story, but, navigating this thing is like trying to build an airplane while you're simultaneously flying it.
Yeah, that's not the appropriate time to do on-the-job training, and I don't think the pandemic is either.
No. Well, I mean, and you think about all of the preparation that went into coming up with the IMT concept by folks like Dick Groff and Joni Behrens and everybody that was involved. It's we really do. I think that we've earned that recognition that has been coming from state and even from federal policymakers, and so pass along their thanks to all of them from us. And I'll ask you, I guess, how do we want to end the week?
You know what? I think just reiterating what you just said, and we're taking a lot of credit as a community for keeping the community safe, and for, on an individual basis, following the rules and everything. But one of the reasons Cordova's out in front and a leader in this is because we didn't start from 0 miles an hour. Everybody's trying to get up to 60 or 70 miles an hour on this thing. But when you already start at 40 or 50 miles an hour because you've had years and years of training and dedication and plans put in place as a starting point, it's not a surprise that you can be in a good place. So lots of thanks and appreciation to those who have put us in a position to play it forward.
All right. Well, with that, I wish you a great weekend. And if we don't talk before Monday, then we'll look forward to chatting on Monday.
Sounds great. Have a good one.
All right, a good way to round out the week. Mayor Koplin here on our daily briefings. Don't forget, by the way, there are a couple of very useful phone numbers for you to use if you have questions or comments and or are looking for guidance toward various resources. Call 424-INFO, 424-INFO, and you can get that kind of help. There's also 424-WELL, W-E-L-L, which is managed by the Village of Eac and provides a recording of some of the most up-to-date information on testing and resources and a variety of things. So 424-INFO, 424-WELL. City's got a good website rolling, COVID-19.cityofcordova.net, so you can always get information there. And the state website, of course, which has the various mandates in their most current form, which Cordova is mostly in line with some exceptions. There's going to be a little bit of overlap between the state's changes to the travel mandate and what happens in Cordova. But our local officials know that and are aware and are ready to deal with any issues that could arise from that. So everybody's on top of it. But COVID-19.alaska.gov, another very good resource. Particularly, though, 424-INFO. If you want to be able to talk to somebody local, again, be able to comment on things, be able to ask questions, that's a good thing to keep in mind. And with that, we will get this program uploaded to youtube.com/Cordova TV for the online users. And we'll see you in the 1 p.m., 5 p.m., and 8 p.m. hours next week, each weekday, Monday through Friday, on KLAM and KCDB.